The House of Brown. Does that sound as cool as the House of Imran? No. No, it doesn't.
Knowledge is power.
I'm getting handsome now, aren't I?
As I get older, they stay the same age.
I'm in heaven.
I don't want to fly. Where did you come from?
Be quiet.
That's impossible!
The House of Imran, or Al Imran, is the third surah or third chapter of the Quran, and it immediately follows Al-Barak, the cow, in chapter number 2. I'd like to start off by reading the first 3 paragraphs of the introduction to this chapter that is provided in my study Quran, because I think the editors of this particular version of the Quran do a really good job of summarizing what this chapter is about very briefly, far better and more briefly than I could do. From the Medinian period, Al-Imran, or the House of Imran, refers to the family line, or house of Imran, mentioned in verse 33. Early in the surah, there is a discussion of the interpretation of the Quran, raising questions of its levels of meaning and the spiritual qualities necessary to understand the depths of the text. Among the events of sacred history described in this surah are the birth and early life of Mary, the mother of Jesus, the birth of Jesus, his miracles, and his relationship with his apostles. Like Al-Barak, this surah addresses the status of the people of the book, both Jews and Christians, criticizing them strongly, but also distinguishing between the good and the bad among them and affirming their belief in God and the uprightness of some among them. A considerable portion of this surah is devoted to the events of the Battle of Uhud, the second major battle that followed the first battle, the Battle of Badr. In this second battle, the community of believers fought the Makkans at the foot of Mount Uhud outside Medina. This part of the surah also deals, among other matters, with the moral issues of cowardice, hypocrisy, and worldly attachment, and theological questions such as the state of souls once they leave this worldly existence. Now, there's more to that summary and description, but I think those first 3 paragraphs do a good job of talking about what I really care to talk about today. But before we jump into the analysis and discussion portion of this review concerning the passages and verses of chapter 3 that I thought were particularly worth talking about, I would first just like to give you my general thoughts on this chapter. Did I like it? Did I not like it? Was I somewhere in the middle? Overall, for me, I liked the House of Imran. I thought it was really interesting. It was very, very fascinating. It didn't hit me in the same way that chapter number 2 did, in that, the Quran's very repetitious, and so there were things discussed like, the status of Jews and Christians in relation to Muslims and all that, I had already heard before in chapter number 2. And so I didn't get quite as much out of the House of Imran as far as, interesting stuff to talk about, things that were compelling and new to me, as I did in chapter number 2, because chapter number 2 exposed me to many of the things that were discussed or would be discussed in chapter number 3. One thing I would like to say about the Quran that I've noticed thus far, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the first review in this series, but the Bible often gets accused of, in Christianity and Judaism, they get accused of a lot of hellfire and brimstone type teaching and preaching. And there's a lot of evidence for that within the scriptures. I mean, the first quarter of the Old Testament is very heavy metal. It's, you shall be put to death for this, you shall be put to death for this, you shall inherit, the weeping and gnashing of teeth, all this stuff. There's a lot of that in the Bible, and there's some of that in the New Testament, but yeah, there's particularly a lot of that in the Old Testament. And so Christianity and Judaism, they kind of have that reputation often. I don't hear people talking about that as much in relation to Islam in America. That's probably because Islam is not as popular in America as Christianity or Judaism is. But I gotta bring this up. On almost every other page, there is some reference so far in the Quran to the disbelievers will inherit the fire, capital F fire. They shall be punished more severely than ever. I mean, it's like, in the Bible, it's like there are heavy doses of that throughout, but it's not consistent at least from what I can recollect. It's not like every other page there is some reference to the fire that the disbelievers will inherit and, live out eternity in agony. It's not as consistent as it is in the Quran. So far in the Quran, it really is everywhere. And I'm not necessarily saying that all references to the capital F fire and those who will inherit it are necessarily bad. I'm just saying that they are unsettling. All right, so now I would like to jump into the analysis and discussion portion of this review, where we talk about all the passages and verses within chapter 3 of the Quran that I found to be particularly interesting, compelling, and worth talking about. Now, the first passage I would like to discuss is chapter 3, verses 35 to 45. I'm not going to read it because I don't think that's necessary, but I will say this passage is very interesting. This is where, in chapter 3, they start talking about Mary, the mother of Jesus. And there's references to Zechariah and John and all these, biblical characters. It even talks about Imran, the father of Mary, and Mary's mother as well. And there's this almost backstory to the birth of Mary, not just the birth of Jesus, but the birth of Mary, that I don't recall there being any references to in the Bible. And so it's just interesting to read this in light of what I've read in the Gospel. It's been a long time since I've read the Gospel, so I could be wrong about all this, but I don't remember an Imran or a Hannah, I think is what Mary's mother is called. I could be wrong. I read this whole passage and was like, this is really neat, because it also goes into Mary devoting her life to service and prayer and prostrating herself before God. And it's just wild. Now, the passage that comes immediately after verses 35 to 45 is verses 45 to 55, which I do want to read. So let's go ahead and read those verses, and then we will discuss them. When the angels said, "O Mary, truly God gives thee glad tidings of a word from him, whose name is the Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, high honored in this world and the hereafter, and one of those brought nigh. He will speak to people in the cradle and in maturity, and will be among the righteous." She said, "My Lord, how shall I have a child while no human being has touched me?" He said, "Thus does God create whatsoever he will. When he decrees a thing, he only says to it, be, and it is. And he will teach him the book, wisdom, the Torah, and the gospel. And he will be a messenger to the children of Israel. Truly I have brought you a sign from your Lord." This is Jesus speaking. "I will create for you out of clay the shape of a bird. Then I will breathe into it, and it will be a bird by God's leave. And I will heal the blind and the leper, and give life to the dead by God's leave. And I will inform you about what you eat, and what you store up in your houses. Truly and that is a sign for you, if you are believers. And I come confirming that which was before me, the Torah, and to make lawful unto you part of that which was forbidden unto you. And I have come to you with a sign from your Lord, so reverence God and obey me. Truly God is my Lord and your Lord, so worship him. This is a straight path." And when Jesus sensed disbelief in them, this is referring to just people that disbelieve him, he said, "Who are my helpers unto God?" And the apostles, the people that actually didn't disbelieve him, they said, "We are God's helpers. We believe in God. We bear witness that we are submitters. Our Lord, we believe in what thou hast sent down, and we follow the messenger. So inscribe us among the witnesses." And they plotted, and God plotted. And God is the best of plotters. When he said, "O Jesus, I shall take thee and raise thee unto me, and purify thee of those who disbelieved, and place those who followed thee above those who disbelieved, until the day of resurrection. Then unto me is your return, and I shall judge between you concerning that wherein you used to differ." Now that is a really interesting passage, because it appears that Muslims do believe in the virgin birth of Jesus. However, it describes Jesus in here as a messenger and as a Messiah, but the Messiah being a messenger of God, but not actually being God. So that's a difference between the Muslim perception of God and the Christian perception of God. But one thing that's common between Muslims and Christians is verse 50. It says, "And I come confirming that which was before me, the Torah, and to make lawful unto you part of that which was forbidden unto you. And I have come to you with a sign from your Lord, so reverence God and obey me." So that first part of verse 50, where it says, to make lawful unto you part of that which was forbidden to you. That is a common idea between, I guess, Islam and Christianity regarding Jesus, in that Christians believe that Jesus came to fulfill the law and set us free from the law, essentially. In that, like, you know, there are many things now that Christians are allowed to do that if it weren't for Jesus, they would not be allowed to do. Another verse that I would like to read and discuss is chapter 3, verse 92. I'm just going to read it and then we will talk about it. You will never attain piety till you spend from that which you love. And whatever you spend, truly God knows it. Now, if you're like me, you typically don't hear the word piety often used. And so I happen to have forgotten what it meant. But here's the definition from dictionary.com. Reverence for God or devout fulfillment of religious obligations. If you're going to be using piety, something, using it as a descriptor, you could say a pious act or remark or belief or the like. In light of these definitions, I would say that this verse, it's just good. It's like you're never really doing something good that's truly great or holy, pious, unless you're spending from that which you love, unless there is some element of you denying yourself, either in service to others to further God's mission or just in service to God. I mentioned at the beginning of this review that this chapter, much like the last chapter, discusses in pretty good detail the people of the book, which ones are good and righteous, which ones are not. This chapter and this passage that I'm about to read distinguishes between Muslims, Jews, and Christians, and kind of endorses some while condemning others. And I don't know, this verse was one that I came across where I was like, that's pretty thought-provoking. That has me curious. So I'm going to read this collection of verses. This is verses 113 to 115 of chapter 3, and then we will discuss. They are not all alike. Among the people of the book is an upright community who recite God's signs in the watches of the night while they prostrate. They believe in God in the last day, enjoin right and forbid wrong, and hasten unto good deeds, and they are among the righteous. Whatsoever good they do, they will not be denied it, and God knows the reverent. Now, it's interesting reading the footnotes to this passage because there's a lot of, disagreement among different factions of Islam as to what is meant here when it says they are not all alike. Among the people of the book is an upright community. Some say that this verse is just Muhammad affirming that Muslims are that upright community. They are a people of the book, and they recite God's signs, the watches of the night, and they prostrate. Versus Christians and Christians and Jews that don't. And then there are other views that say, no, this passage is, it's saying that there are among Jews and Christians, there are some who are better than others. There are some who are upright. They may not be Muslim, but they are respectable. They are not like the disbelievers or the idolaters. They are trustworthy. They've just got some things wrong. So that's another interpretation. All I know is that this passage just had me thinking. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, that will actually do it for my thoughts on chapter 3 of the Quran. My review and analysis of chapter 4 on women will be coming soon, and that one, there's a lot to talk about, so stay tuned. Anyways, though, if you have read chapter 3 of the Quran, or you just found this video interesting, please leave any comments or questions you might have in the comment section below. And as always, if you like this video, please like it and subscribe, tell your friends about the channel. And never forget to